Hey, Laurie, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
I'm pretty excited to chat with you about, and there's so many things to talk about, but I guess I should start at the beginning because you are a writer first, I believe. Well, apart from being a parent first, but
Yeah.
a writer first. Where did that spark for writing come from?
Well, I'm not one of these people who's been writing stories since I was 4, actually. I taught kindergarten for 10 years and dealing with 4 and 5 year olds over that time span, there was a lot of changes
Yeah.
that happened. And one day while I was still teaching, I was motivated to go home and write a book. But that was 2008-ish,
Okay. Well, I'm curious, what was that motivation? Was it a question that a child asked? Was it a moment when you were reading a story? And what was that?
I don't remember the one particular instance, but it was over time, the amount of learned helplessness I was seeing more and more in the children. And there was, one little girl in particular, I had to physically block her mother in kindergarten from helping her tie her shoes. It probably wasn't even tied shoes. It was probably Velcro shoes. But it was a mom who was so in a hurry always. She did everything for her daughter. To the point where we'd had conferences and, you really ought to let her try to do these things. She's like, and then one day, like I found myself physically blocking her and thought, this can't be right. Like there's gotta be a better way. Anyway, it was that kind of behavior. And
Really? Wow.
in so many instances, things like my pencil is broken, right? And that's what was happening with these 4 and 5 year olds. It's not that they couldn't solve their problems. It was they didn't know the steps to take to attempt to solve problems. And we're talking like a broken pencil problem or a
Yeah.
shoe problem or zippers or, an issue in the block center. So that was the motivation. And I guess one day it just got to me and maybe the idea sprang, I don't know, but I went home
All
and wrote
right.
it down in my Word document, Word 97.
It's funny because it feels like, I mean, my partner Liz is a K to 6 principal,
Oh yeah.
and and she experiences that to this day with, not kindergarten children, but kids in grade 6 whose parents believe that they're actually helping, but they're actually, now
Kindergarten.
I'd like to say maybe they're not allowing the child to be empowered
Yep.
to solve their own problems, to experience frustration.
Yep.
And it reminds me of something I saw you say in a talk. Um, Boredom is a good thing, and maybe actually bumping up against a problem and actually being able to deal with it. Is that where some of that came from then?
Absolutely. And at a young age, so really simple problems so that they
Yeah.
experience multiple tries, for putting on your pants, for putting on your
Okay.
socks, that kind of
Right.
stuff. They start them early so that when they're a late teenager, they don't have a complete meltdown when they're not successful on the first try, right? Which
Yes.
is happening,
Oh,
and
of
they give
course.
up,
Yeah.
and then that's it. So yeah, you
Wow.
betcha. And I still talk to teachers, and I always hope that when I say that phrase, learned helplessness, I'll be like, I'll see the heads going, no, we don't have that anymore. And instead I get a lot of deep sighs, a lot of head nods, and then I always
Right.
pause and think, shoot.
Well, I saw it. I worked at a university bookstore between 2006 and 2011, and I saw that a lot with 19 and 20-year-olds who this is their first time, and the helicopter parents were actually there helping them buy their textbooks, and I refused to talk to the parents. Not that I refused to; they're wonderful people,
Yeah.
but the parent would ask the question, and then I would address my answer to the child because I'm like, when you go home after Labor Day weekend, Junior needs to know this, and so I'm telling Junior, you can listen, but I'm telling Junior because Junior like needs to be equipped with this, and Junior needs to know if he has any questions about these, he can come back here and talk to us,
Yeah.
right? Because probably because they were so helpful throughout the child's life that they so you're starting them early. Thank you for all people who work at universities. Uh,
Trying.
so how did your books fit into that world? What problem did your books solve when you were putting them together?
So I use one phrase per book. So like the first book that I wrote that day was I can handle it. It's
Okay.
repeated. So I know something I know is 4 and 5 year olds. I don't know 19-year-olds going to college, but I know 4 and 5 year olds, and the repetition, they crave it. They
Yes.
benefit from it. a certain rhythm and cadence, kids love that. It sticks in their brain, like Dora, right?
Yes.
Right? I don't know if you
Oh,
have
got
kids.
my map. Got my son's around the right age. So
Yeah, yes, the
yeah,
map. I'm going to go to the map. And that's how they learn best. And
right.
so the pictures are funny. So the little boy's best friend is a hedgehog, which is funny because he's prickly, and so nobody wants a big hug from a hedgehog. But anyway, maybe that's my other thing. But so the pictures, are humorous for the children.
Right.
The repeated idea, I can handle it, and I can handle it. I've had reviews from adults that say, this is boring. It says the same thing on every page. Well, yeah, it's maybe not meant for a 40-year-old, but it is meant for a 5-year-old, and they respond so well to it. And it sticks. It really does stick. It becomes their self-talk, which is the whole idea. And so for each book, there's a different mantra that I want to plant in their brains before they hit puberty, before they hit junior high, and the whole world, it's chaotic.
Right.
I want to make those pathways already, when they're little. So they get to junior high and, actually I can handle that.
Okay.
I will be okay. I believe in myself. I can do this. Like all those kinds of positive things.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what did you do? You wrote the books, and then what was your next step?
Was to do nothing for approximately 10 years.
Okay. All right. Standard writer behavior.
Yeah. It was around, I think it was 2007, 2008 that I wrote it. So self-publishing really wasn't a huge thing, right? There was certainly no Facebook yet. And so, or maybe just the advent. So there was no Facebook group. So I think I did a quick Google search. How do I get published? You see all the ads come up, and you see the traditional way that's just super overwhelming. And so anyway, I just, I closed it down, and I didn't do much with it for 10 years. I got married, I had kids. And after I had been a stay-at-home mom for about 8 years, and I was bored out of my mind, I'm a creative person. I need a creative outlet. I was in an online group of moms sort of looking to get their mojo back, that kind of thing. And, I said, hey, I actually wrote a book, crazy enough, 10 years ago. And will you guys read it and tell me what you think? And they all loved it, and they were very supportive. And so it gave me that, gentle hug, but also kick in the butt to look into getting something done with it. And so as soon as I learned how long traditional publishing takes, should you be lucky enough to get a contract, I guess, I went whole hog for self-publishing and just learned everything I could and got her done.
And because it was a picture book, did you, and it was early days, or at least digital, we're still early days of digital publishing. Did you go for the print version first?
Yes. Absolutely. I was never going to do an e-version. I like them more now with my kids, but at the time 3 years ago, no, we did not read books on an iPad or whatnot.
Right.
And so I didn't even do it for close 6 to 8 months, I think, after I had done the print version. And then Brian Meeks convinced me
to go with an ebook as well.
Well, you could only run ads at the time on an ebook.
Oh, I see. So you created the ebook to create discoverability, which that's a smart way to get there. And I mean, from my own experience in the industry, picture books for children are still by far the print outsells ebooks, only because even my son, when he was that age, and I worked at Kobo, and I had awesome tablets that Kobo tablets that would be wonderful picture books, and he had access to anything he wanted. He gravitated to the print books anyways. So, so you did create ebooks, and I love that you created them for ads.
Yeah, it took me a while. And, after watching all these successful writers for adults, writing ads, selling books, it was something that I just had to try. And there wasn't so many children's books as ebooks 3 years ago. Lots, well, they're all probably now, or almost all. But it worked. It was great.
Well, that's fantastic. So obviously you wrote a book, you sat on it for a bit. How many books do you now have, now that you've started and gotten this going?
I have 11 published in English, and I've been picked up by 7 foreign publishers. So they're not all produced yet, but...
So wait a second, you self-published the English version, and then you got a foreign publisher to buy the rights to French, Italian, what languages?
Okay, let me see if I can do this.
That's okay. We won't be tested on this.
I can never remember. No, there's 7. There's 2 Chinese versions.
Okay.
For old Chinese, they call it a new Chinese.
Right.
Korean.
Okay.
Romanian, but it's not produced yet.
Okay.
Icelandic just came out.
Wow.
And Vietnamese, but it's not produced yet.
Wow. And you're picking
7.
But so what I'm thinking about is, I mean, the Asian market, a huge population as well. So people are going to ask, and I have to ask for my listeners is,
sure.
How did you figure that out where to sell to?
I did almost nothing. I was really lucky. I had an agent contact me. And so you have that moment of, this is a scam, this is spam.
Yeah. Like a foreign rights agent.
Yeah, a foreign rights agent contacted me. So I took to Facebook, like, is this real? Is this not real? And she was fairly new at the time.
Okay.
And I just took a chance. So of course I had a lawyer look over all the paperwork and talk to some more experienced people than I was. But in the end, even though you can access foreign markets and publishers on your own, like, I did not have the time.
Yeah.
So in the end, going with the agent was the best bet for me, and she hustled for me. So.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is the agent has a network of people. They're probably at Frankfurt, right, where they can meet with publishers from around the world in one place in 4 or 5 days. And that's what they do. And obviously it was a very smart agent who was scouting and looking for stuff that was working, but how can I sell this to other languages? I mean, that's, in my mind, this is, I'm not sure who the agent is or if you're allowed to share who it is, but this in my mind is evidence of an agent who's forward thinking, right? Because they're willing to look at the stuff that's succeeding out of the self-publishing arena and say, what can I do to work with this author so we can all make money on this product together collaboratively?
Yeah.
It's obviously been a good experience for you then.
It's been good. It's been a real learning curve. I had to learn about contracts because when you just straight into, you don't have to do anything except maybe with your illustrator. But I had to learn about that, get in touch with a lawyer and just do all that understanding of what they needed from me and how the money works, how the advances work, how the royalties work, right? So.
Cool. And was it print and ebook rights for the foreign markets? Yeah.
Yep.
So they're releasing them, so they would be available in both formats as well globally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And of course, with you doing them yourself, they are most likely available in English around the world, but now they're available in other formats. That's fantastic. I guess the only other question is, and maybe the agent has access to this, but okay, I've got my book in Korean. How do I market it?
Right. I know.
Yeah.
I don't. And I haven't seen them on Amazon. I don't even actually know. Like I had somebody snap me some pictures from China and he said, look whose book I saw on this, book stand outside this market.
Oh, and a physical book stand. That's amazing. I love that. Okay.
Yeah, in China. So I have friends all over the world snapping me pictures. So I don't pay much attention to how they do it.
Right.
But obviously they have their method.
And the publisher, one would imagine the publisher who's invested in this book is invested in marketing you. That's why they bought the rights or licensed them or however. Yeah. That's fantastic.
I think there are a lot of physical bookstores. The Korean publishers sent me some promo that they did. They created a book and they made pop-ups.
Okay.
So as an indie, I don't have a pop-up book.
I know that.
I'm not going to go down
Ingram
that road.
Lightning Source doesn't allow the ability to create a pop-up print-on-demand book.
Right, but they did, and it was the coolest thing ever.
So you must have copies of each of obviously copies of these books on the brag shelf in your home. Yes. Okay, yes, exactly. That's fantastic. Well, congratulations. I mean, to have this. And again, a lot of self-publishing stories are, hey, I wrote a romance and I sold 5 billion copies. Oh, I wrote a thriller. It's not as common to find a children's book author who's done well in that market, but then also to have exploited the rights in other languages. So congratulations. That is phenomenal.
Thank you.
I want to come back to your concept of the importance of wild kids and releasing the wildness in your kids. I mean, your creativity and the heart of your creativity seems to be very much focused on allowing kids to be creative? Because what happens to us often is the creativity gets beaten out of us as we age. We believe we're maturing, but we may be subduing that spirit. I mean, how does that, how has that
You
worked into your whole persona?
It's just I just became really interested in mental health for children as a whole. And the more research I did, and when I saw the issues and I think it's a crisis, with our teens especially, it's just so heartbreaking, really, what's happened. And so anything I can do to help boost the mental health, and I think positive self-talk is a huge part of that, but also we schedule our kids to the finest little minute, and they're eating supper in the car, and they're not doing homework, or they're not playing, and my own kids just bring it home all the time, over and over. So my son, who says, yes, I want to do that competitive soccer, but I just don't have enough time at home, right?
Right.
So we had the snowfall, and they played outside for hours, and who knows what the heck they're doing out there. They're building worlds in the backyard. Fantastic, and it's necessary, and they're growing, and they're exploring, and maybe they're making mistakes, or learning some things the hard way, but they're learning, and it's
Right.
just, it's that wildness that I think we've really lost, and we need to rediscover.
So the unscheduled fun, like,
Just unscheduled time. Maybe it's not
yeah,
fun. they
yeah.
can be bored, and great things can come from boredom.
And well, now, as a writer, is that true for you? That boredom is a key thing for some of your creativity?
The hardest thing for me to find these days is time to write.
Really?
And I have fallen in love with the marketing and the teaching and the business and the writing. Like I told you, I was not always a writer, and so
Right.
I don't consider myself I'm not like a fantastic writer. I just had an idea that really resonated with people,
Right.
but I don't have that much time for writing, so.
So that is funny. Most writers say, I don't like the marketing. The writing is what I want to do. But you've fallen in love with the marketing, and you've actually turned that into helping other writers. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, once I started, kind of coming out about my book, because it's such a vulnerable thing when you've
Yeah.
held on to it for 10 years. So it's like, I've written a book, and I didn't want to tell everybody because it was very quiet in the beginning. But once I started talking about it, I got a lot of calls and messages for coffee, and can I be and what do you think
Right.
about this? And I realized, what they say about so many people wanting to write a book. It really is true. And there's just as many who want to write books for kids. And just because of my teaching background, it was just so natural. Every time I learn something new, I think, who can I teach this to? Like, how can I share that? And so just very natural, because there's people out there looking for information. And I feel like I really am a teacher at heart.
Okay. Now, are you teaching for an institution as well as teaching writers, or are you a full-time teacher, independent teacher and writer?
No, I I guess you could say I retired.
Okay. Very,
From
very early.
very early. I have 3 kids, and I just couldn't even stomach the thought of teaching a room full of 5-year-olds. I tried it for 1 year. Kudos to all the teachers out there. I was so exhausted and tired, and I felt like I could do it all, but I wasn't doing any of it well. I
Right.
wasn't the teacher I used to be, and I wasn't as good as I used to be. I wasn't the mom and the wife and all that kind of stuff. So I took a few leave of absences, and then eventually I, got the notice to come back or quit. So I ended up quitting. We were very lucky. My husband's job could support us. And so that was the 8 years I spent at home.
Okay.
And so the courses are really just this new world of online courses, right? So I
Yeah.
just have them on Teachable and on Facebook, and that's, satisfying my need to teach for now. So.
Okay. Excellent. That's fantastic. So what are some of the courses that you actually teach that can benefit writers?
So I do like a how to publish, but it takes
Okay.
people from not the story writing, because I don't consider myself a
Yeah.
teacher writing, but how to find an illustrator, so your different options and what to think about and what to look for and what to ask.
Right.
And then I feel like people really like short and easy. There's a lot
Okay.
to be said for not 100-hour course. So I have one that's how to publish a profitable picture book, but it's a 30-day plan.
Okay.
So here's what you can do each day that should be, half an hour or less, but the time that it takes you to get your illustrations will add to that. So you won't be published in 30 days because illustrations can take a few months, but
Right.
it's something to do for a little bit every day. I actually have a free course that I quickly made, and it's just using, the ABSR to determine if your idea will be likely to sell. So it's called
Okay.
Sucky or Stupendous. A lot of people, I did this like a webinar, I'll tell you if your idea is any good. Well, so many people wanted feedback on that. I thought, I'm just going to make a course that I don't have to talk to people every day because they just want that validation. And
Right.
I think that all ideas, could be profitable and it just depends on how you do it and what illustrations you come up with and all that, how you market it.
And you also have, speaking of free content available for writers, is you have a podcast as well.
I do. Yes. Yes. Whole new world, that podcast.
Yeah. How, what is the podcast about and how's the process gone for you?
It's called The Writer's Way, and it's spelled properly. When I first started, I did my last name The Writer's Way, and then I felt like people don't know what I'm trying to get across there. A little too clever. But my idea was really just celebrate people who have been there and done that and gone through the process. So I've interviewed a lot of fairly newly published authors.
Yep.
We talk about what they've learned, what advice they have, blips along the way, how they found their illustrators, because that's still a huge topic, is
Right.
where to find an illustrator and how much should it cost, those kinds of questions. So I've talked to a lot of people about that, and then I've started expanding a little bit more, sort of like almost lessons, like here's how to find an illustrator, and I have a podcast episode about that. And then I had one case study over this summer with it was actually a dad from my son's soccer team who found out what I did and was really interested. And so I said, well, come on the podcast and you'll be my case study and I'll help you and walk you through. But he's kind of fallen off a little bit, so I'll have to plug him.
But you can remind him that so did you for 8 years, right?
Yeah. Right? Yes. I've been there.
That's fantastic. And I guess where can people find the podcast? How do they get to that?
So I do put the videos on YouTube. So it's
Okay.
just the Writer's Way podcast, and it's also on all the podcast channels. So
All right,
Spotify,
cool.
Stitcher, my website, lauriewriter.com, Apple, I guess, and iTunes and all those.
All the places.
All the
So
places.
looking back on your career and being a writer, being somebody who inspires and educates other writers, what would you tell the Laurie who had this idea that she created? She came home and wrote it down. What advice would you give her?
Go for it. Go for it. The whole thing has been completely life-changing for me. Like when I think about being in the classroom now for 6 hours a day, it's painful. Like I'm so thankful. So I think everybody should go for it, but I don't think you should go in blind. I think you should do what I did, which is find people who have been there and done that, and they have advice to give, and listen to them. And whether that's free Facebook groups or courses, it doesn't matter because there's tons of information, but soak up as much as you can.
God. Well, Laurie, thank you so much for taking the time to share some wisdom and inspiration with me today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me. It was great.